This is Brandon with Fleet Feet, and today we've got a neutral daily trainer for you from the On Cloudsurfer 2. And like I mentioned, this shoe is a neutral daily trainer and it is best for the roads. And it's now on its second version. The first one was actually a pretty big hit and a lot of people did like it. Some people had some issues with it, but it seems like On has cleared up a lot of those in the second model, even though this shoe looks very similar to that of the first model, especially in colorway. This is the men's version and this is the women's colorway. There's actually a lot more than what meets the eye to this shoe, and a few tweaks have definitely been made, and there is a notable difference in the ride. And just a quick disclaimer in this video, On actually sent me a shoe that is just a little bit too big with my size. This is an 11.5 and I'm actually an 8.5, so I was definitely not able to test this version just yet, but a lot of our Fleet Feet review team did get the opportunity to, so you're gonna hear some of their thoughts, and I'm gonna work through some of the tech breakdown of this shoe and just provide you guys with a nice overview. So without further ado, let's get into it. But before we do, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps to support us as we're putting out new videos. So let's break it down and just start with the upper. The upper is made of an engineered mesh, and On claims that this is actually a more breathable upper than that of the previous model. I'm not really noticing too many differences from a breathability perspective, just visually speaking, and just from a first look here, the heel is padded and so is the tongue, which just provides a much more plush and wrapped locked-in fit. Most of our reviewers did find that the upper was very comfy and just very nice and plush on foot. Also, another thing to note is that the tongue is not gusseted, but it seemed like our team didn't have any issues with lockdown or fit. They also didn't have any issues with any blistering or hot spots or rubbing, and they found that just from an overall fit perspective, it was streamlined and they had just enough room in the toe box. But like we've mentioned in a lot of our other videos before, my foot shape versus your foot shape versus some of our other reviewers' foot shapes are all going to be a little bit different, but the actual silhouette and shape of this shoe is going to be the same. So therefore, everyone is going to fit a little bit differently in this shoe, and it's going to feel a little bit different for them, especially in the upper. The best way to find out what shoe is going to fit best for you is if you walk into your local Fleet Feet store, go get your foot scanned and go through the fit ID and outfitting process. And there you can find out exactly what shoe is going to fit best for you. Now let's move on to the midsole. And like I said, while the midsole is pretty much the same, it actually feels very different. While the DNA is the same, there's definitely a lot of tweaking that's been done. Like the previous model, there is no speedboard in this shoe. And honestly, I've always been a fan of removing the speedboard in these shoes, but most people are worried that with no speedboard, does that mean the shoe is going to be too unstable? And On has responded and shown that this shoe can still be stable even without a speedboard. In the first model of this shoe, it definitely was very soft, and the CloudTec Phase and the Helion foam were very mushy and actually led to some stability issues, and that was one of the issues that some of our reviewers fell into in the previous model. On has since cleared that up, and they've retuned and redialed some of the CloudTec Phase cushioning. They've made the shoe a little bit firmer, and they've actually made it more stable. So overall, when you put your foot in this shoe, it definitely feels much more structured than the previous one. And all of our reviewers across the board did agree that this shoe got firmer. But what they didn't agree on is whether they actually preferred the first version or the second version more. Some of our reviewers, like Caroline, actually enjoys a more squishy and softer landing like the first model, but one of our reviewers, Kate, actually prefers a firmer feeling on foot. So there was definitely a bit of discourse and debate between the team as to whether they liked the first model or the second model, whether firming it up was the right decision or not. Overall, though, they could agree that the shoe is a little bit more stable, and that was helpful. And the drop of the shoe comes in at 9 millimeters with 32 in the heel and 23 in the toe. And there is a decent amount of stack here, not too out of the ordinary, but overall just really nice. Let's move on to the outsole, and On actually used a little bit of a different approach when developing the outsole of this shoe. On actually used a system to create this outsole called FEA, which is a finite element analysis. Finite element analysis, or FEA, is a computer-based method that predicts how a product will react to real-world forces. It's used mainly to help engineers design more informed products by analyzing how a product will deform, wear, or break out over time. And On's goal here was to create a more durable outsole and use thicker padding lugs on the bottom of the shoe. In order to achieve these goals, they use that FEA system to analyze where most of the pressure is, where the shoe is breaking down in what areas, and reinforcing them and just making it a more durable shoe. Now that we've gone over the shoe, let's go through the ride and performance. And one of our reviewers, Kate, actually had a pretty good perspective on this one. She reviewed the first model of the Cloudsurfer and actually said that she remembers that Cloudsurfer to be somewhat softer than this one. She found that it felt perfect. It was just soft enough with a little bit of give, but it wasn't overly squishy for her, so that's something she really liked. Now, Kate actually has flexible arches and flat feet, and for her, she likes her shoes to be fairly firm. And for her, this shoe actually played into that much more, and she really liked it. But on the contrary, Caroline actually had some different thoughts about this one. She usually likes a squishier shoe, so the transition from her from a squishier shoe and a softer shoe to something firmer, she wasn't all that impressed at times, and she actually just found that the shoe was sort of just fine. There was nothing wrong with it, but it wasn't really knocking her socks off. And not to say that Caroline thinks this is a bad shoe, it just didn't really fit into her preferences and what she was looking for or what she was running in. She's just someone who enjoys more tech, a little bit more cushion, and she enjoys a more energetic ride. And the On Cloudsurfer is just built to do something a bit different. And much like the first model, the weight of this shoe isn't too bad. The men's model comes in at 9.2 ounces or 260 grams, and for the women's model at 7.9 ounces or 223 grams. And the price of this shoe comes in at a pretty competitive price point at $160. But if you want to check out even more shoe reviews of On, you can check them out right here on our channel at fleetfeet.com. And what video do you want to see next? Do you want us to compare this shoe to another one? Do you want to see another On review, or do you want to see something completely different? Leave that in the comments below and let us know, and we'll be sure to get back to you.